A black cat actually spoke human language. It even jumped on the coffin lid, scolding his descendants for being unfilial. Even for Master Dian, this strange event was quite unusual. Of course, this wasn't the first time the old man had heard of such things, but rather, it was because of the strange occurrences happening these days. There were indeed too many of them. Originally on this night, the old man was just on a small hill outside the village, preparing to observe the key. He wanted to see what exactly went wrong in the mountains that caused the catfish to harm people. This made Zhao Dian, who was forced to come along, suffer a great deal. After all, he was bare-armed and bare-legged, attracting many mosquitoes. But unexpectedly, the old man had just started when the old-fashioned phone in his pocket suddenly rang. Master Dian naturally looked unwilling. Who calls in the middle of the night? But upon hearing that the caller was Li Cheng from the next village, and that it was because they were holding vigil for his deceased father, the old man's eyes immediately lit up. Could it be that business was coming? Unexpectedly, Li Cheng on the other end of the phone was actually nervous, telling Master Dian a strange thing. He said that a black cat suddenly came to his house tonight. Not only could it not be driven away, but it even jumped on his father's coffin and spoke like a human. If he heard correctly, the black cat was saying the two words, unfilial piety. The old man was also very surprised to hear this. Then he got into the divine car sent by the other party and rushed to the next village. As soon as they saw Master Dian arrive, Li Cheng, who was in mourning, repeatedly apologized. After all, disturbing someone's sleep late at night was really inappropriate. But what could he do when such a strange thing happened at his home? Master Dian naturally didn't mind. However, he immediately noticed that the courtyard in front of him was not quite right. He didn't think too much about it, but turned to ask Li Cheng, "Where exactly is that strange black cat?" Upon hearing this, Li Cheng hurriedly invited the old man into the morning hall. As soon as they entered the door, they heard a sound, a unique threatening sound from a feline. The old man looked intently and immediately saw a black cat, with its fur puffed up and body arched, vigilantly staring at him. However, after seeing that the two newcomers made no movements, the black cat turned its head and lowered itself, beginning to pant and gather strength. As soon as Li Cheng saw this, he immediately knew that the cat was about to start pecking again. Sure enough, after a while, the black cat, under the old man's gaze, raised its front paws and began to jump and howl on the coffin lid. It was completely like it wouldn't come down without a few packs of small dried fish. And listening to the sound of its pecking call, it really sounded like it was saying the two words, unfilial piety. And Li Cheng, seeing this, was also heartbroken, saying that his father had sneezed and accidentally ruptured a blood vessel which led to his death. Logically speaking, 88 years old is considered a full lifespan. But why did his father still have to keep scolding him endlessly? He carefully recalled these years, and it seemed like he hadn't mistreated the old man. Helplessly, the father and son hurriedly knelt down and kowtowed repeatedly, hoping that the old man could let them go. If this matter were to spread and affect his grandson's important life events later, it would be bad. However, the more Master Dian listened, the more he felt that something was wrong, because he felt that the cat was not saying unfilial piety, but rather no cremation. Upon hearing this, the father and son immediately stopped, looking again at the black cat. It also suddenly became quiet at the same time. It panted heavily, seemingly quite approving of the white-haired old man's accurate translation. But these two words, no cremation, what exactly did they mean? Regarding this, the old man explained, "This means your father doesn't want to go to that place." Of course, that place refers to the crematorium. Before the father and son could react, The black cat suddenly let out a long breath, and then stared unblinkingly at Li Cheng, looking at its puffed-up, angry appearance. It really seemed to be waiting for his son to give an explanation. A strange thing suddenly happened in a remote mountain village. It was said that a black cat was possessed and was scolding people on their coffin lids. As soon as this matter came out, it directly scared the father and son who were in mourning. Helplessly, they had no choice but to invite Master Dian from the next village overnight. But as soon as Master Dian entered the door, he heard that the black cat's accent was a bit strange, although the sound sounded indeed very similar to the pronunciation of the two words, unfilial piety. But in reality, what the black cat was saying was actually no cremation. Hearing the old man's quite accurate translation, the black cat immediately quieted down. Then it directly stared unblinkingly at the father and son, looking very much like it wanted an explanation. This scene immediately worried Li Cheng. You must know, burial is no longer practiced now, even if they secretly buried him. Once the authorities found out, wouldn't they have to dig him up again? Once these words were spoken, the black cat, possessed by his father, immediately became unhappy. It immediately raised its front paws again and started pecking. This sound almost made the old man laugh, because this time, the black cat really was saying the two words, unfilial piety. Li Cheng was stunned upon hearing this. To him, there was no difference between the black cat's calls before and after. Master Dian, seeing this, quickly interrupted, saying that if he didn't get to the point, his father would really get angry. Sure enough, as soon as the old man finished speaking, the black cat instantly arched its body, and even its voice became a bit louder, as if saying, "Meow, damn it. You son of a bitch, you are truly unfilial." As soon as Li Cheng saw this, he almost cried in urgency. He hurriedly advised his father to calm down first, and then quietly asked Master Dian, "Does my father really have such great abilities that he can possess this black cat?" But no matter how soft his voice was, the black cat still heard it clearly. It immediately stretched out its leg and prepared to get up and continue scolding. But having been active for so long just now, it was indeed a bit tiring for the cat, so it could only pant heavily, too lazy to bother with these unfilial son and grandson anymore. The old man also carefully looked at the cat in front of him and found that it was completely black. Clearly, it was exactly the kind of mysterious cat mentioned in the past, and mysterious cats themselves have a psychic nature. Looking again at its considerable size, it had probably lived for 5 or 6 years. Then it would be even more likely to become a spiritual vessel. And this cat, with 5 toes on its front paws and 4 on its hind paws, and with odd numbers being yin and even numbers being yang, could therefore simultaneously step into both the yin and yang realms. Especially this kind of completely black mysterious cat. Recalling what he had seen earlier, the black cat raising its paws high should be in the process of transferring yin into yang. Presumably, Li Cheng's father got in this way. After listening to the old man's explanation, Li Cheng became even more worried. But just at this moment, the black cat had obviously recovered its energy, and once again began to sing and dance on the coffin lid. Master Dian was very helpless. If his father really kept doing this cat would probably not live long. At that time, his father's soul would only be able to float out from the crown of this black cat's head. Once the time came, his father would probably enter the animal realm and would not be able to be reborn as a human in the next life. As soon as these words came out, Li Cheng and his son were immediately terrified. They knelt on the ground and kowtowed repeatedly, hoping that their father would stop tormenting this poor cat. It would be better to quickly go through the procedures and be reborn sooner. But unexpectedly, although the black cat heard it, it still looked stubborn and unwilling to give in. In the end, Li Cheng was really out of ideas. and had to choose to ask Master Dian for help, hoping that the old man could help. And Master Dian also knew what was more important, and immediately bowed to the black cat. Then, with a serious face, he said, "If you continue to stay in the cat's body like this, the ghost messengers who come to guide you will not be able to find you, and in the end, you will only become a wandering ghost." Upon saying this, it also seemed to startle the black cat. It instantly gasped, stopping its meowing. Seeing this, the old man continued to persuade, saying death is like a light going out. All that's left behind is just a physical shell, and whether it's burial or cremation, it will not harm Yin virtue, nor will it bring misfortune to descendants. Why are you still so attached to this? It has to be said that these words were enlightening, directly stunning the black cat into silence. But Master Dian was clearly not finished yet, and instead brought out an even bigger threat. He said, "What if you miss the roll call time in the underworld and become a wandering ghost? Then the hellish messengers will naturally come to his Li family to find a descendant whose lifespan hasn't ended to fill the quota in the underworld. That would be the real misfortune for your descendants." Of course, it's hard to say whether this was made up or not. Anyway, it scared the father and son kneeling on the ground, so they kowtowed even more vigorously, and even begged their father tearfully, urging him to quickly go to the underworld and complete the registration procedures, and not to miss the appointed time. Now, the black cat was also unsettled, staring intently at Master Dian, as if trying to verify the truth of this matter. But Master Dian still maintained a serious expression, making it unable to figure out the real situation. So, after a moment, the black cat suddenly lay down and started to vomit. This scene immediately stunned Li Cheng. Could it be that his father was having another new problem? But Master Dian advised him to just wait and not to panic. After vomiting, the black cat looked up and was suddenly startled by the scene before its eyes. It saw that there were 4 pairs of eyes staring intently at it. The black cat couldn't help but meow curiously. Not understanding what was happening, it immediately ran away, afraid of being caught by these strange creatures in front of it. This directly baffled Li Cheng. He cried out, begging his father to say something, and not to run away without a word. After all, even as a ghost, one should have some responsibility, shouldn't they? But the black cat didn't look back and vanished in a flash, darting onto the roof, and then disappearing into the night. Fortunately, Master Dian couldn't bear to watch any longer and provided a timely explanation, stopping the father and son from chasing after it. The old man said that your father's soul has not departed, but is still staying in this morning hall. As soon as he finished speaking, a cold wind suddenly picked up in the morning hall, and the 2 candles also changed color at the same time. Something is wrong. How does this look? It doesn't look like a good sign at all. There's a folk saying that black cats are psychic, and you must not let them get close to the deceased's morning hall. Otherwise, it will definitely cause a corpse to reanimate. But what happened today was strange and bizarre, because after the black cat jumped onto the coffin, the deceased old man Li did not reanimate, but instead, the black cat was possessed by him. If it weren't for his son Li Cheng inviting Master Dian over that night, this black cat might have really been tortured to death by him. But now that the black cat has run away, Li Cheng and his son were very anxious. Fortunately, Master Dian explained in time, saying that old man Li's soul was still in this morning hall. But because this newly departed soul has no roots, old man Li is currently rushing around the room, trying to find a place to settle down. Saying this, Master Dian gestured for Li Cheng to look at the morning hall, at the incense and candle smoke that was being stirred into chaos. Afterwards, Master Dian didn't say much more, but rather reluctantly took out a demon-subduing tool and nailed it directly onto the coffin. This action had no other intention but to give old man Li something to cling to, so he could stabilize himself. Sure enough, as soon as Master Dian finished speaking, the morning hall became quiet. Why bother with all this? Burial and cremation for the deceased have no negative impact whatsoever. After all this fuss, they have long missed the time for the hellish messengers to guide the way. Oh well, it seems I have to personally send him on his way. As the saying goes, the first soul travels by wind, the second by water, and the third soul becomes a wild ghost on the spot. Looking at Old Man Lee's current state, we can only consider sending him off via the waterway. Without further delay, Master Dian immediately instructed Li Cheng and his son to prepare some ghost money, paper, and ink. Then, based on Old Man Lee's birth date and time, he drew a simple yellow talisman and smeared blood from his thumb in the center of the talisman. Then, the old man suddenly stared at Li Cheng beside him and asked a question. That was whether he was Old Man Lee's biological son. These words immediately stunned Li Cheng. If someone had said this normally, he would have definitely exploded on the spot. But now, after Master Dian mentioned it, he became somewhat uncertain instead. After all, his parents were already deceased, and he had nowhere to find anyone to confirm. Helpless, he had to say tremblingly, "Yes, I think so." Master Dian didn't think too much about it, turned around and smeared the blood from his thumb onto Li Cheng's palm. Then he began to fold the yellow talisman in his hand. Although he hadn't touched these things for some time, the memory in his bones was still very deep. Before long, a paper boat the size of a palm was folded out by him. The old man looked quite satisfied, and then grabbed some incense ash and sprinkled it inside. Although this incense ash is useless to the living, in the underworld, it is valuable travel money. Master Dian handed the paper boat to Li Cheng, and then spoke to the air in front of him, telling Old Man Li to quickly follow his paper boat, made with his birth date and time, and prepare to set off. As soon as Master Dian finished speaking, the incense ash in the paper boat suddenly rippled with a layer of smoke rings, as if something had landed on it. Amidst everyone's surprise, urged by Master Dian, they immediately set off and went together to the small river near the village. The night was late and slightly cool. Fortunately, there was no strong wind. The group carefully protected the paper boat and arrived at the riverbank. But when the paper boat was placed on the water, it started spinning in circles in place. Master Dian smiled helplessly, advising Old Man Li not to linger anymore. Just go west upstream, and you'll be fine once you pass the bridge arch not far ahead. As soon as Master Dian finished speaking, the self-spinning paper boat suddenly stopped, and then, under everyone's gaze, went upstream, slowly drifting towards the stone bridge not far away. The old man stared intently ahead, slightly emotional, saying that each bridge arch in this river is considered a gateway to the underworld. As long as Old Man Lee's boat passes through the bridge arch in front, he will naturally know how to proceed on the road ahead. Then everyone just waited quietly like this, until the paper boat disappeared from sight. Master Dian looked at the moon in the sky, estimating that about the time it takes to smoke a pipe had passed. So he asked Li Cheng to look at his palm, to check if the blood mark he drew earlier was still there. Li Cheng unfolded his palm upon hearing this, and was immediately surprised to find that the mark on his palm had disappeared without a trace at some point. Master Dian nodded upon seeing this, because this phenomenon represented that Li Cheng's father had safely arrived. Strange things don't happen often, but there have been many in the past few days. This young man just fell while riding his bike, and his whole demeanor became listless. You see, he has no fever and no cough, but he just has a headache and feels weak all over. This made his mother mistakenly believe that this kid was pretending to be sick to skip school. So she dragged her son and found Master Dian, hoping the old man could help take a look. Master Dian also found this matter very strange after hearing about it, because in his impression, this child, Zhao Gai, was as healthy as a calf. How could he be so listless? But now, looking from the outside, no problems could be seen. Helpless, Master Dian tried to take Zhao Gai's pulse. This pulse reading was extraordinary, because he discovered that this child's soul was actually missing a piece. Upon saying this, Zhao Gai was directly startled and became alert. Under the old man's questioning, he quickly recounted his experience from yesterday. It turned out that yesterday, when he was riding his bike back from town, when passing by the stone bridge in the village, for some unknown reason, he suddenly felt a stiffness in his ankle, and then he fell to the ground. Saying this, he directly raised his foot and thrust it in front of Master Dian. The old man glanced at it, couldn't figure out what was going on. Helpless, he instructed Zhao Dian, "Go get my medicinal wine gourd." Then the old man took a big gulp, then sprayed it directly onto Zhao Gai's ankle. Instantly, a tingling, icy sensation surged up, making Zhao Gai shudder. The old man quickly stopped him from scratching it, telling him to wait a moment. Sure enough, after a few moments, on Zhao Gai's ankle, a black handprint suddenly appeared. This sight startled Zhao Gai's mother. Has our son been cursed? Could he have provoked something unclean? As soon as she spoke, even Zhao Gai started to worry about his life. The old man couldn't help but laugh heartily. He said Zhao Gai's soul was only missing a small piece. Or to be precise, just the tip of his soul had been pinched off. If we can find it, then everything will be fine. If not, there's no need to worry. Because with Zhao Gai's robust physique, it'll grow back in less than half a month. But the price for this is that it'll cost just a tiny bit of lifespan. Zhao Gai's eyes widened upon hearing this. What? This thing, converting it back costs lifespan? Doesn't that mean I'll live a shorter life? No, no, no. This deal is too unfair. He shook his head like a rattle drum, his face full of indignation. But just then, Master Dian's phone suddenly rang. Hearing the news, the old man was immediately stunned, because the caller was Li Cheng, who had invited him over last night. According to Li Cheng, the blood finger mark on his palm had appeared again, and this situation, either old Li's soul was rejected by the underworld and pushed back out, or it was dragged back from the living world by some strange force. Master Dian immediately sensed something was wrong. He quickly asked Zhao Gai, "Exactly which stone bridge did you fall off of?" Zhao Gai didn't understand, and subconsciously answered. Upon hearing this, the old man exclaimed disaster, because the stone bridge Zhao Gai mentioned was exactly the single arch stone bridge where they saw old Li off last night. Now, Master Dian couldn't sit still. He quickly told Zhao Gai to go home and stay there, and not to go out for the next couple of days. Then he instructed Zhao Dian to find a kerosene lamp and prepare to work. Zhao Dian was immediately puzzled. Why leave a perfectly good flashlight unused and look for that old-fashioned kerosene lamp? To this, the old man explained, only true fire from nature can reveal true evil. As for flashlights and such, they're useless. There's a folk saying that when crossing a bridge at night, you must never stop on the bridge, and even more so, do not look down from the bridge. Otherwise, you will inevitably see something unclean. However, on this day, flickering lights intermittently shone in the dark night road. It turned out to be a grandfather and grandson traveling at night. The reason was that the old man was hungry, insisting that his grandson get up in the middle of the night and take him to his niece's house for some dumplings. This strange request naturally made the grandson grumble the whole way. If you've seen the previous episodes, you'd know. This grandfather and grandson are none other than Master Dian, who is quite famous in Lower Sanli village, and Zhao Dian, who has always been bold, different from usual. At this moment, they were putting on an act. After all, with over a decade of acting experience, the grandfather and grandson's cooperation was very smooth. At this time, Master Dian was playing the role of a blind old man, while Zhao Dian was still playing himself, acting as the grandson. But as they were walking, Zhao Dian suddenly stopped. The old man immediately got into character, scolding Zhao Dian for being temperamental again. But in reality, in the middle of the path in front of them, a strange child was sitting. The child looked about 8 or 9 years old, facing away from them, head down, not saying a word. Zhao Dian had to muster his courage to ask, "Whose kid are you? What are you doing here?" The child suddenly turned his head upon hearing this, revealing 2 dark red pupils. But Zhao Dian wasn't easily scared. Seeing that the child didn't respond, he even went closer and asked again in a louder voice. Unexpectedly, the child's mouth seemed to be sealed shut, not uttering a single word. This left Zhao Dian at a loss. Helplessly, he had to try to coax him gently, asking if the child couldn't find his way home, and if they could give him a ride home or something. Hearing this, the child finally reacted. He cautiously grabbed the bamboo cane and pulled the old man to walk forward. When they passed a fork in the road, the child turned around and led Zhao Dian and him to turn in another direction. And so, shortly after, they arrived at that familiar stone bridge. Seeing this, Zhao Dian immediately pretended to be very surprised, saying he didn't expect there to be a bridge here too. If you add the one they passed before meeting the child, then they would have crossed 2 bridges tonight. Saying this, he loudly reminded his grandfather, saying that they were currently walking on a bridge. As soon as Zhao Dian finished speaking, the child suddenly realized he couldn't pull the bamboo cane anymore. Looking back, he realized that the old man had actually stopped. Then he leisurely took out his wine gourd. He said, "Country folks have an unwritten rule, which is that when crossing a bridge in the middle of the night, you must make an offering to the nearby ghosts and spirits." After saying this, under Zhao Dian's curious gaze, he sprinkled the wine on the bridge planks. Afterwards, the old man specially reminded Zhao Dian, when crossing a bridge at night, don't look down at the sides of the bridge. But it would have been better if the old man hadn't said anything, saying it actually made things worse. You see, while Zhao Dian was asking why, he subconsciously turned his head to look at the river. After he looked, he realized that he seemed to have violated some taboo, because in the river, far away, 2 people were floating, and they were floating against the current, drifting towards the stone bridge under their feet. The old man immediately stopped, thinking he had misheard, wanting him to repeat it again. But now Zhao Dian was so shocked he couldn't speak, because he saw clearly the 2 faces floating in the river were exactly the same as theirs. The old man was immediately alarmed and stood up abruptly, scolding Zhao Dian for talking nonsense. Zhao Dian, flustered, stammered, "Those 2 people are about to float under the bridge." After hearing Zhao Dian's confirmation, the old man's expression changed drastically. His face was full of shock, as if he couldn't quite believe it. But just at this moment, the child leading the way suddenly burst into laughter. This laughter almost scared Zhao Dian's soul out of his body.